Hello, everybody. Hi, and welcome to our first live stream about tenant.
Yes, we have microphones.
Woohoo!
To
Oh, the moderator freeze.
That's crazy. I love it. Technology, how it works, how it should be. All right. So now it should be fine. And let me start again. That's live. That's the experience of a live stream. And I live in Germany, so welcome to the German internet. No, that's maybe not the problem. I hope it will be better for the next 1 hour. So let's start with a short introduction. Hello, Thomas. Hello, Vinesh. Hello, Raphael. And I would like to start with you, Thomas. Maybe you start with a short introduction.
Okay, thanks. So yes, I'm Thomas, MVP for since 2012, focusing on Office 365 and even OCS former. And in my role at Havernat, I'm a solution architect at the moment, responsible for large cross-tenant or tenant-to-tenant migrations. As well, you see it later in the link. I wrote some free ebooks about cross-tenant migrations. So probably that might be from interest, and I'm happy having all my MVP mates here as well.
Thank you. So let's go to Vinesh.
Hey everyone, my name is Vignesh. I haven't been an MVP as long enough as Thomas, so I'm just hardly 1 year old of being a Microsoft MVP, and I have close to 12 years of experience in Microsoft 365. I've been dealing with tenant-to-tenant migrations for quite some time, specifically for large enterprise customers. So really looking forward to share my learning with everybody here. Thank you.
Perfect. And now let's move on to Raphael.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Raphael. I'm also MVP for Office 365, Azure, and Windows Insider. And yeah, I'm CEO of a company and working with a lot of law firms and also leading a law firm and be one of these great concerned DPOs worldwide. So yeah, we will have a lot of fun talking about some interesting topics from tenant to tenant migration. And back to Michael.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, I'm also an MVP for M365 Office Apps and Services since 3 years, 2 years. And yeah, I'm actually not so familiar with tenant-to-tenant migrations. That's the reason why I'm here and try to moderate these fantastic technical specialists. But I do have a lot of experience with user adoption. This comes from different user groups, also a user adoption and change management user group, but also by having also an own company. I'm a CEO of a small company working with teams and change management user adoption. That being said, let's have a good start with our first question into this round. I just heard about, or I'm familiar with tenant-to-tenant migration. So I heard the term. That's okay. But what was your expectation as you heard the description of tenant-to-tenant migration, just the term? What was your expectation when you started with this topic? Vinesh, would you like to start?
Yes, so basically when we say tenant-to-tenant migrations, right? So what I would expect, or the way I see this is, an organization, they basically have all their collab workload. I mean, Back in the past, all these were on-prem stuff. You used to have like specific SharePoint server, Exchange, or Skype. But then gone are those days. Today we have everything coming into this one single platform called as Microsoft 365, which is a SaaS offering. And this is what you basically call as a tenant, right? So when you say a tenant-to-tenant migration, this basically comes with merger and acquisitions where a company has acquired another organization and now they want to migrate all their workloads which they have from one tenant to other tenant, so that they all can collaboratively work on one single tenant rather than working on two different tenants, right? So this is what basically comes to my mind, and I believe this is the vision when we are talking about a tenant-to-tenant migration. But I would love to hear from Rafael and Thomas as well about their views when they say tenant-to-tenant.
That's a very good first point, Vinesh. Thank you. I see on a compliance area, I see a lot of companies, they're starting in the pandemic with tenants and creating every tenant in their country, or creating a tenant for the department. And now we have the next challenge that we move everything together. For example, for data classification and information protection, pure view information protection, so that we have one label in one tenant, maximum in a multi-geo tenant. And also I have these use cases that I see companies that said, okay, we want to go to multi-tenant. What I have to do at first? You have a tenant-to-tenant migration to one. Or we have the same discussion on a use case with Yammer. I want to go back Yammer to a worldwide one tenant Yammer as a new community in the Viva engaged area, and now we need one tenant. And so I see more and more use cases for tenant-to-tenant migration. And at the beginning, Microsoft and tenant-to-tenant migration was not the best combination. Or Thomas?
No, actually not. I can fully remember it was during the last physical MVP summit, where we've been jointly together in Redmond, where something was coming up in Exchange to actually migrate Exchange between tenants. And that was the first part where I ever heard something about we need to migrate. It was just a little bit out of my mind because we just migrated a couple of things on premises, we upgraded versions, and then we were happy that no migrations actually happen anymore. And then they come up with the idea of, oh, we have merger and acquisitions, and then some bells ring. I said, oh, no, that goes now into a kind of another migration scenario. And at the beginning, the first impression was, oh, that's easy, like usual. So you just migrate and you're done. But then I totally forgot that all the services are chained. And this chaining and migrating everything at the same time made it up to a complete new level and complete new challenge, where we actually figured out you can't migrate a cloud. So I tried that outside as well. So I tried to migrate a cloud from one mountain to the other. It's simply not moved. So if you move your hand in, you're just not touching anything. And that was the first impression I had actually when I said, well, you need to look completely different into this. And furthermore, that's the part where we have Michael as well, for sure. I thought even change and adoption becoming, or has a complete different standpoint now. It's not like just one tool and you make them happy, but you disturb users massively. There is no such thing like smooth migration anymore. Everyone feels pain. And now you squeeze it together, and Microsoft, yeah, you can squeeze as much as you want, but not with the performance we are providing you, so you're not squeezing. That was actually the first shock I actually had. And then I was thinking, okay, let's go back to the beginnings and to the basics of IT and about our business administration topics, which we actually have, and see how we make a big project out of this.
So question to Michael. When you migrate tenants, when you when you migrate tenant to tenant with different rings, Thomas, then it will be very interesting for the user adoption, or?
It depends. So that means, like, yes, for the user it is. The regions are different, even the tenants. So if you have now, technically, you look inside, and yes, Witness feels already the pain in the behind when we migrate OneDrive. a tenant
Tell
can
me
be
about it.
slightly different and the migration breaks. And then if you see it even on the feature sets, so if you have different features enabled, not only what Microsoft is providing, so one tenant is already rolled out with new features and some not, you can't get them together. And that's painful. And if you even move something and the tenant is not even technically seen so far feature-wise different, but just have incompatibility issues, they simply say, no, you don't migrate. And you have nothing you can do because it's a shared service. So it's a lot of things in tenant-to-tenant migration are completely out of your control. And maybe, Vignesh, you can tell something about that incompatibility mode, which we had.
Sure. I'm really glad that you asked, and we are coming to this interesting thing, right? So myself and Thomas, we are working on an interesting project here at Avanade, and what we are trying to do is these are two multi-geo setups, right? So the customer A and the customer B, they both are multi-geo environments that we have, and obviously for the performance reasons, we thought let's go with the cross-tenant new OneDrive migration tool, right? So now this cross-tenant tool, you have it available for, I believe, for mail. You also have it for your OneDrive for user data, and I think even SharePoint is coming in preview, right? So the funny thing about this OneDrive cross-tenant migration, of course, the performance is great. It's a lot more better compared to any other third-party tool in the market, right? But the thing that you need to be mindful of, for you to use this tool, both the tenant should be on the same schema or patch level. What I mean by this is, now let's say that the backend SharePoint farm on the source is on a different patch level, and maybe on the target, the patch level is different. And of course, we know how Microsoft, they do their patchings, right? So if they don't both match, then of course you cannot go ahead and migrate. So we have seen several such scenarios wherein both the farms are not aligned. It could take 48 hours. We've seen scenarios wherein this has been like, it has been the case for almost four days or 5 days, right? So, and this was really troubling us. Unfortunately, that's the way it is as of today. And we all know in such a big cloud environment, it's not possible for Microsoft to just pick and choose and tell that, hey, we won't just patch you unless and until you're running a dedicated Microsoft 365 tenant, because we all know that these are shared environments, right? It's not a unless and until you opt for a dedicated tenant. So that was really painful, but unfortunately, that's what it is as of today. So if you're planning to use this cross-tenant tool, as I said, the performance is great, but these are certain factors that you need to be mindful of. And I hope at a certain point, Microsoft will make the experience better, because at this moment, this is really troublesome for at least for large enterprise customers when they're doing maybe like you're doing like 500 or 600 badges of migration per day. It's really painful.
It is. And yeah, let's come back to the question. Even Vignesh mentioned already a couple of tools. Microsoft is, or actually recognized it since a year, 1.5, that they need to also provide solutions for merger and acquisitions as well as for carve-outs. There's also a solution, by the way, which is called tenant-to-tenant migration. It's not just merging, but extracting, same way. And Microsoft has a couple of tools. They are even officially now stated on the Microsoft Learning Platform. So one is definitely the OneDrive migration, which actually just changes, simply set the pointer from one tenant to another tenant, even across different geo regions. That's one part. Then we have the SMTP domain sharing, which is just sharing SMTP domains between two tenants and allowing the same logical method, like for OneDrive, by reattaching also mailboxes. It's not yet fully there, and it's even in a private preview, but it is officially announced. About SharePoint itself, I guess I read something about it. It's not yet on Learning, so I can't talk a lot about this. And every other service, actually, which we have is not yet in place. And there is one solution. It's not really a migration. It's another pain in the behind, is extracting Teams chats, because that's most likely the slowest API I've ever seen in my life. That's so slow, everyone can just try it. So join a chat, a group chat, and try to scroll up to the first message. If that chat is maybe 1 year old, you are scrolling for 2 days. And that's the migration performance. But there is even a solution, but only Microsoft themselves are allowed at the moment to use them, which means they have a trick 17 and around the corner. And as we say, within from the eye through the back, it comes out again. It's called an Azure Data Lake solution for extracting chat messages into an XML file, which can be segregated into group chats, personal, so individual chats, and that can be then sent via mail or via OneDrive to the participants of those chats from the source tenant and may be available in the target tenant. Nevertheless, if you have a nice XML search tool, you might be able to find something, but it's more like a compliant thing where maybe Raphael can say something about it, but you can't migrate chat. If you do so with the actual tools, everything else, again, that was also the question, yes, need to be done by different vendor, third-party tools, so to speak. And that's also an interesting topic. I guess we talk in another stream about that one. There are so many different vendors, but there will not be one single tool which you can use for cross-tenant or tenant-to-tenant migration. You will work with multiple vendors. You work with Microsoft, you work with Quest, you Skykick, you have ShareGate, you have maybe Apps for Pro, you have whatever else. There are much more, but you need to elaborate the performance, and you need to also see what you want to achieve. So, and every tool is doing it differently.
So comparing all of your answer, there's not a button that you can say, migrate everything to Switzerland, migrate everything to my tenant in Canada, or I have 3 multi-geo environments, migrate to one with one click. So as the answer, no one-click solution, no solution. It's easy for every children. So you have multi-vendor solution, multi-processing, multi-challenges you have to fulfill, and that's why we make these webcasts. And this is only the first one. I think that's very important for all the attendees. It's the first one of a kind of some more with tools and compliance and everything. And I don't want to talk too much about the new things, but yes, we will have some more streams about the different questions and topics.
Yeah, and I think legal hold will be also one topic in the last week we have. That's also something super important. And you have to definitely take care about it.
And we already got a question about Dynamics 365. We do have a special session about the Power Platform, which also includes the Dynamics 365. Anyone who wants to take this question and answer it in 2 sentences, a little bit more
2
than
sentences.
it's really hard.
Power Platform is something you have to differentiate between citizen development. That's one part, completely different. Then you have the corporate developers. And if you talk about Dynamics itself, so not the Power Platform, everyone who has ever done a kind of SAP or whatever else is on the market migration, it's exactly the same. So which means like you have to identify the data sources, you have to identify the workflows. You're not doing an IT migration, you are doing actually a complete, I like it in German, Unternehmensberatung, so which means like it's the corporate
consulting service
and process migration. And then you need to merge processes, which means like you cannot apply the same thing into the single company because simply both companies are different and have completely different parts. And that needs to be designed first, and that has nothing to do with IT at all. And then you need to see how you can just actually shift this.
Thomas and Vinish, hopefully you will agree, Dynamics is one of the last tools Microsoft thinking about tenant-to-tenant migration. It's more the core tools, Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and the smaller ones. So we don't talk about Kaisala anymore. It's closed in this September, but Dynamics is one of the main targets. But is there a special one-click solution? No. And this is what Thomas said, and we're discussing also with the product group. There can't be a one-click solution because, Thomas, you said that's too
you have
different.
data connectors, right? So that means like you can have flows, but even within a flow, so if you have a user who has the tenant A, which is the source tenant A in his domain name, and then you have migrated it, now it's say target user B. So if you even import a flow, that flow is instantly broken. So you need to just manually do something, or you do a mapping in the background, and then you just figure out what you can do with exported flows, for example. And that's the easiest thing, really. I'm talking about the much easiest thing ever. And if you have Power Platform, you have the data connectors, right? And that can have a data connector even outside of Microsoft Cloud. Then you need to see how you can incorporate this. And that is a huge analysis. So we have a huge team working with the client to identify only the source of data for just Power Platform. Not talking, by the way, I wonder that nobody asked for Azure itself, which is, I guess, for end of the year, we can do another stream just about Azure.
Yeah, and just to build upon the point which Thomas was saying, and to the question which came, right? So, Power Platform, of course, it's complex because it's just not one single product like your OneDrive or your SharePoint, or it's multiple things put together, right? But and if you want to think about it, some things which are simple, like small user-developed Power Apps or flows, maybe these things can be exported and imported into the target tenant. But then, as these products are evolving more and more on the organization level, as Thomas was pointing, they do have a lot of connectors on the backend, right? You could have these connectors talking to on-prem data sources or some other third-party cloud sources, right? And given the nature of these products, they are deeply manifested with each other. It's quite complex for you to just say that, okay, I'll detach it from here and I'll go and attach it into. It doesn't work that way. And for the most part, it involves you for a lot of re-engineering where you have to build it once again from the scratch in the target tenant. So long story short, Power Platform migrations, they are really, really complex. We have seen a lot of customers try this. It's just not easier. So anytime you're thinking about it, please think that you need to re-engineer the stuff, you need to rebuild the stuff. It's not a simple, plug and play. It doesn't work that way.
So the best clear up your tenant before. So just get rid of whatever is not in use. Identify it, and Microsoft has awesome solution to identify it. And I would, Raphael maybe, but afterwards I really want to see how Michael is saying something to the change and adoption process behind, because that's now extremely crucial.
Yeah, in general, what you have to do is you have to communicate all the changes what you're trying to do. So what you usually do is you have to evaluate the technical aspects. That's what you said already. And if you know what to do, you have to communicate the best and less painful way to the users. And you said there's a citizen developer part. And if you think about the citizen developer, always the statement was you can create your stuff on your own. You are not bound to the IT. So a ton of users created a ton of different flows and maybe apps, and they build it without any known dependencies. That's not so easy to handle, because if you just say, hey, we plan our migration, someone said, oh, I'm not affected. It's just, maybe this one crucial and elemental workflow who was in the team working to extract some data since 3 years, and everyone forgot that this flow is running every day a couple of thousand times. So this is really, really complicated, and I'm really happy to use another session to talk about the different angles you can choose for the user adoption part, because this is often forgotten. If you talk to a technical person, you always get the answer, yes, you can do it like this. And we already had the tool discussion. That's interesting. At the very beginning, the first question is always, what tool can I use to just migrate with a sync? We already heard that's not possible. But anyway, always the idea is to use some tools and everything is fine. None of these tools are communicating with your users. None of these tools are anyhow involved in the actually pain or in the actually task for the users. And yes, it's not a non-touch migration. Don't think about that. It's not working like this. It's working for some aspects, but not for everything. And Power Platform is definitely this where the users have to touch their own flows and programs and however you call it, apps, different levels of this.
So can you assume even what that means for IT people? It's actually, there's a complete new role. We call it still rollout manager because we have not found a new fancy name like dependency manager somehow.
Yeah.
You remember when we migrated Exchange either into the cloud or between the different on-premises environment, we only had delegates. That's easy. Just get the delegates, migrate them together, you're fine. Here, we are talking about something completely different. You have like the M365 groups. You have Yammer groups. You have group chats. You have whatever in it. And now it comes also to flows. So if you have a flow like a simple one, if a message or if a mail, I receive a mail, send it to Mr. XYZ. So that means how you want to migrate it. And by the way, we had a customer 1 year ago who had actually, what was this, around 14,000 users, but had, sit and listen, 17,000 M365 groups. So how you want to migrate? Where are the, I call them collaboration clusters. So you can only migrate everything at one day. And that, by the way, don't think it works. Yes, it works if you don't migrate content. So this is the pain in between. Where are the...
And we got a really long question over here, asking if, one second, I have to drop something. Does a tenant-to-tenant migration or multi-tenant consolidation have to be completed before a new service can be implemented? Or can this new demand be managed in parallel to the initiative?
That's a good question. I think that is more really from the architectural side.
But then these are two different, just to be clear, right? So it says tenant-to-tenant migration and multi-tenant consolidation. So these are, in my head, I see these as two different, because tenant-tenant migrations, you're moving data across two different tenants, and multi-tenant consolidation is you're bringing multiple tenants into one single tenant, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me start it, because this is a very complex question, actually. It is not only that you just need time for bringing those users and data jointly together again. And if you roll out new services, where should they be rolled out? But there is something similar, which was always happen when you did on-premises migration years ago. So simply said, if users are migrated, you start nearly at 50% provisioning new things already in the target. So that means or in that new consolidated tenant. That's one part. It's easy to keep in mind. Then you can make it more granular. So if you are able, and there are even tools on the market which you can use, if you figure out your collaboration clusters, so who is working closely together with others. It's not only Delph you can use, there are even tools identifying it for you across all the different services. Then also you can say, if that group of people, like say you have a development department, if the development department is already migrated, sure, you can start building new tools also in the target environment. If you make it very complex, then yes, you can even use tenant federations, but then you always have to take care not only about guest user access, which you could use for certain applications, but also the tenant trust, where you can just actually use users from source and target to assign certain permissions. Again, if you do so, that mess it up a little bit, and that needs to be very, very, very closely observed. But here comes the point why all that is not working. If you, you want to save money and you do not want to spend multiple $1 million to Microsoft, and then per se, if you are having 2 tenants, make it simple. Microsoft has a grace period where you can use licenses in both tenants, so they are mirrored, for up to 90 days, so 90 days. If you're a large customer, you might have the chance to have it extended to 180 days. Else, from there onwards, you start paying, and there's no discussion. On day 181, so 181, that's the latest one, you start paying double if it's not migrated. And that means, think about this. Now you need to just have another aspect in a tenant-to-tenant migration, not only technical, not only collaboration cluster, not only change and adoption, you also do it financially. Because if you have 20, 30, 40, 50,000 users, and you start paying for, say, 20 or 30,000 users, an E5 license or M365 E5 license, for another, say, 6 to 12 months, you know what we are talking about. That can make a migration expensive to more than 10, 20, 30, 40 million euros. And we are talking not about something cheap. So you need to get it in range about costs, user experience, and it's limited by tools and speed, and functionality, and company impact. Because you're not only impacting internal people, but you're impacting partners, vendors, your customers, everyone. And that's even a question about if you migrate, how you inform, say, your customer. I'm not talking about partners. They should know whatever is happening. But a customer, now he should write to someone at tenant A, and tomorrow he should write you the order of a multi-million-dollar deal to tenant B. How's that going to work? Oh,
I mute. And yeah, and it's a very good one. For example, for this $1 million contract, you have a TLS connection from this tenant to another tenant. You have an S-MINE PGP connection for encrypted sending emails, and it's not working because it comes from another tenant. So, and I will say, talk also with your data privacy officer, with your legal, with IT security. You have all of these challenges, and also with your partner. And this is what you are talking is happened to one of my projects. You're sending an email, and the partner company said, no, I don't accept this email. It comes from another tenant. I don't know this tenant. And block and go away with you. It's DKIM and S-MINE, but it's not the tenant I know. So forbidden. And that is often also with connection to SAP, for example. So when you're sending bills to SAP via an email, it's only accepted this from this tenant and this address, and not from another tenant. So that's very, very interesting. And one of these typical challenges, or when we collect in the next some minutes, we have use cases and typical challenges. That's one of them, or we have
great challenge.
licensing, email and email sending, and Teams. Oh, Teams collaboration. The same with Teams collaboration, federation, shared channels. Oh, what wonderful topic for one of the next for one of the next streams. Migrating of shared channels.
Yeah, and voice.
Voice, shared voice, and Vinesh, you will agree, migrating of labels. That is one of my. Oh, I think Microsoft don't think about it, or?
Yes.
No.
At this point, yeah, there is no proper way of doing it, and glad that you brought up that point, Rafael. And being a
Yeah.
compliance expert, I always wanted to ask this question to you, right? So, and I'm pretty sure you've seen the scenarios in the past, and you also, Thomas. So, what? Just help me understand, right? So, let's say there is a customer, right, on tenant A. They have these retention policies or whatever for 10 years or for 15 years or whatever, right? And today they decide to migrate, okay, and the migration is done in 1 year. So what happens with these retention policies which are set for 15 years, right? So what happens? There is no clear answer for that. So these are some areas. So is there something that you want to talk about that as well? Because we would really be happy to hear. I'm pretty sure a lot of the audiences who are seeing this would echo the same question. So it'll be better to hear from you.
I mean, there's one part,
Yeah.
let me recite a little bit out of this free ebook, which I've written, and I could have written probably 300 more pages. But one part is where it actually starts with, and I think that's what we experience and discuss already, is cross-tenant migrations are very complex and time-consuming, part one. This must not be underestimated, is the next sentence. And then just for the general technical aspects, what we are talking today, there are 4 topics which are key to success. If you miss one and you do not have the experienced people in, you will fail. So, and these are, you need client and delivery stakeholders. That's absolutely key. You have to have a project management team from all 3 sides. Now you can imagine how that is if 3 project managers need to align something. Then you need to have a very experienced global solution architect. That means not someone who knows on the keyboard each and every single PowerShell command, but he need to understand M365 in all details. Whoever is talking to the solution architect, the architect need to understand what they are talking about. And not to forget, you need the change and adaptation team from all 3 sides. There's a simple thing to explain. Take OneDrive, very simple, only files to be moved. The source tenant has no limit, or maybe has even some people who have 3, 4, 5 terabyte data in, and on the source side, it's limited to 500 gigabyte. And now, that means you need the client stakeholder. You have a solution architect, how to bring it over. You need the project manager to align, because either you lose data, somebody needs to make the decision. Then you need to communicate this, or you need to change the company policy, but not for everyone, or for everyone. That's the question. And if we see this complexity, and we have not done anything technically, that is the tenant-to-tenant comparison at the beginning. If you don't know what you expect, you can have fancy technical solutions, and simply they break. Either the user is not accepting it. I would not know how I should reduce maybe my roughly 700 gigabyte data in my personal OneDrive. What should I throw away? My pictures from 8 years ago? My wife would kill me maybe because I chose the wrong one.
And this is very good. And when you say we have these pictures and we have a retention label on this picture or a retention policy, then the challenge will start. And Vinesh, I know we have a session about it, a special stream about retention, information protection, and everything which is connected to peer view. But one idea out of this is what I say: when you have a company or an enterprise company, you have to think at first where I store which data. Because when I want to move or migrate or to 10 migration in the future, or we have due diligence processes with also splitting one part of the company outside because I sell this part to another company, and that's typical. We know enterprise companies are selling 50, 40 companies a year and sell it and migrate and all of this. There's a team that only migrate every time, every month is migrating in and migrating out. You have to think about where you store your data. And for retention, and this is very interesting, you know that the retention policy follows the people in the storage. And this is very interesting. It's not sensitive labeling with the following the data. It's following the people and the label on the storage. So when you have 15 years, very short, I tried very short. When you have 15 years in tenant A, you don't have 50 years in tenant B. You have to configure, migrate, and this is a little bit of pointing to the next stream. What happened? I only asked the question, and Vinesh, we will answer in the next stream,
Yes.
so that the attendees can follow us to the next stream. What happened
Yes.
when the retention policy is on the last activity, or is it better on the last change, or is it better to start the 15 years at creating the file?
Got
And
it.
the answer you will get in the next stream. Hopefully it's okay, Vinesh. Oh, Vinesh, you are.
No, I'm really looking forward for it. Yeah.
We're looking forward for the next stream.
Yeah.
Just one part I would like to get back to Michael. Now we have talked really a lot about all the different nice services within M365. Could you imagine only the user related, so the personal services, how long a changed communication will be? How people should read this? What you want to communicate? Make a video, make online sessions, write something? I guess nobody can read it. How you see it?
It feels like I got the more tricky question as Raphael did. There's a strict answer on Raphael's side. So I think about a multiplier by the number of users. The first idea is, how are you currently communicating with your users? So if you have identified how you currently communicate with your users, you can build on it. But this is just for one side. If you go for, what did you say? 3 different parties here. You have 3 different parties who are involved. At least 2 have different policies and ways to communicate. They have another culture, and this different culture has to be addressed. There is definitely the way you can go with some video trainings, podcasts, AMAs, like a regular recurrent meeting with a executive level or with some stakeholders at all for communicating. This is something you can arrange, but everything will fail if you don't know how you currently communicate and how you address your users. If you record a video stream or a video series or something like we do right now, we talk about this topic. If someone explains it and tells everything, but you just get a view of 10% of this video, you missed your target because you want to communicate, and there's not one answer for that. You have multiple ways. You have to use multiple ways, especially for this one, because the different ways how you communicate is a different aspect the users will receive the information. And you have to abstract the level of communication. It's not just everything I heard is technical on a brilliant level. You 3 guys know what you're talking about. But if you say it's similar to a user, they will say, "Oh God, I'm done. So whatever you do, just give me a hand note or something, a description. Give me something I can work with. But don't tell me this, whatever you do in the background." So you have someone to translate it. And you have you have to translate this to a language a user is working with. If you have a merger and acquisition, you have different cultures, you have different wordings, you have different communications you currently use. Do you have maybe, and this is more tricky, the same terms in your communication, but for different parts in your organization? Like a department whose currently communication is maybe responsible just for external communication, and in the new companies also for the internal communication. And you say, okay, you will receive some emails from the communication department, and someone said, okay, why should I receive some marketing files, or why should I get some website information or whatever product information you get? And this is not as easy. Thomas, are you looking for a specific number? I
No,
feel I
actually not,
just try to avoid it for a good reason.
what I actually had is when I even spoke to all the technical teams, not only on our internal side who migrate, but even to the client. I told them about the adoption groups, and I guess that will be in the last stream which we have actually in the series. But we have these 5 different adoption groups, and I simply told them today, when we also need to initiate a migration device, for example, that there is the human error sitting in front of the keyboard, and you have a group like the late majority in Legends, they're simply not doing it. They're simply not doing it.
Yeah.
And whatever you communicate, until you step there with a force and maybe pull their ears, now you have to do it, they are not going to do it. And that's a group like they want to have benefits. So that means it's not only a lot what we need to communicate, because all services are impacted, and maybe the user data goes first and collaboration data comes later. That needs to be explained for a certain coexistence period. But furthermore, you need to communicate differently to all those people, not only cultural wise, also from their willingness to accept a migration or be capable to defend it.
Yeah, and in fact, I really wanted to touch base on that, right, to that question to Michael. So you're the user adoption guru here, right? So as technical people, we could just go on and keep doing migrations and migrations, right? But at the end, a migration is not really successful if it is really having a positive impact on the people, right? Because it's people who matter the most. I could have
Absolutely.
done everything perfectly fine technically, but if the user doesn't know where to click, where to go to get his data, then it's just a big disaster, right? And to the point which Thomas said, right, if you look at in an organization, you would have 2 sets of people. One who are really enthusiastic, they love technology. You don't really need to break your head with them. They just understand how it is, just with a small hand holding, just maybe with some sessions, they understand what it is, and it just moves smooth. But then you also have the other group who are laggards, right? So they are not really comfortable with this. For them, in their mind, they feel that you're just disappointing them. You're not really giving them the tools that is needed. You're really making them counterproductive and all. So how do you deal with people specifically on the second group? Because they need to understand that you're doing this for their own benefit, but at the same point of time, they are not really cooperating. So how do you deal specifically with those kind of people? If you could just throw some light on that.
Yes. I just think about how harsh I will be. Actually, these people who are not willing, absolutely resisting everything you try to explain, you want to offer your hand, you want to help them explain the why, the way, and how it will be, what the benefits are, and it fails. If you still have resistance, you have to force them. You have to just leave them and move everything, and you say just, okay, now I move all your data. And now it's the time. This is the last point. I move your data. Next day, you will work at this. And you will lose some people. To be fair, it's not, as you said, you have some very interested people. You have some people who are, you understand the way, the reason, and all the stuff. If you have someone who's resisting all the time, you spend a ton of effort to convince them, but you will never succeed.
Yeah.
What you can do is you maybe don't use a direct approach, but the most of the people who work or who resist to a change can be not changed, or can be not cannot be impacted by the change itself. They will be impacted by the colleagues. So if you want to bring them on their own interest to the new environment, you have to use the colleagues as well, address the topics to the colleagues, bring them to the new environment, and explain these colleagues why this is a good idea to go to the new environment, why this tenant-to-tenant migration has some benefits, what's the next way to work together, and they can try to convince these people on another level. If you try it on your own, you will fail all the time, and there's no option for you. You can do whatever you want. You have a ton of effort. You spend millions just for a tiny number of users, and you will never succeed. So focus on the bigger chunk of users. Start with all the technical enthusiasts. Go with them. Explain it. They will hop on everything you throw on them. Everything. They are interested. They want to do with it. They want to work with it. They are really, really interested. Then focus on the main people who are interested, but maybe a little bit shy. They don't know what to do with all the new stuff. They don't know how to expect from a new environment. And then go to the one who you can convince, because they are just sitting there, all my work, everything I've done so far, I don't want to lose it, and I don't want to change at all, because everything I've done, I will lose something. These are the people who are not resisting completely. They have a bigger resistance, yes, but they are not completely resisting the whole change. And these people you can convince. The other ones not.
Yeah.
I think it's even within this group, I think we have two different kinds, as you said. One who has only fear and is refusing based on fear. That can be taken. And some, you have ignorant people. And even in my adoption discussions, also with some experts, we said behind the hand like this, you have a great chance in the company to get rid of some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard, but honestly, these are the people the company don't need. That is failure in hire.
Yeah.
It's hard work, but here it comes. 10% of your people, and you can finance probably your entire tenant-to-tenant migration. That is not compliant for Germany, I guess, what I said right now, but there are other countries where it would work.
USA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is that sometimes also the management boards is not aware, and definitely technicians are never ever aware about those adoption groups. I think that is one part at the beginning, very early at the beginning, to really make clear what different kind of peoples we will find.
Yeah.
And how to deal with them. Not ignore it, don't see it technically. But a lot of companies, especially CTOs and so on, think about a technical migration only. We are dealing with humans here. We're completely dealing with humans and on the large scale impact. And I don't know, companies don't want to spend money.
Yes, but Vinesh already said, if you lose these people, you migrated data and no one will use it as you expect they will use it. You will lose the actually benefit of all you have done on a technical side if the users are not using it. And you said it, most of the companies are not aware of the different personas they have. So the different user groups they have to address with different needs. And for one person, it's important to have a SAP connection. For the other person, it's important to make calls every day. And all the different aspects has to fit into a specific high-level description. And there you got a persona overview. And yeah, this is something you can do and you should do on this level. So
But at the end, is tenant-to-tenant migration possible? Yes. Is it one click? No. Do you need experts like us? Yes. Is it fun? Yes. It's a very great project. And I like these projects at the end. I think it's a time for cleaning your data. It's the good position to start with data classification and labeling. Correct, Vinesh? It's the best
Exactly.
time. If you migrate,
Absolutely.
start with data migration, and it's a challenge. It's a good point to think about your adoption, Michael. Is it a good adoption way? Is it a good break to start with a new concept of adoption? And it's a very good idea how to deal with data and how you want to deal with chats, with tools. Do you need all of your tools? Because you have to think about 10-to-10 migration for every tool. So do you need this tool in the future? Or do we have, for example, do you need 5 different chat tools in Microsoft 365? Do you need it in your
Yeah.
company? Yes or no? Maybe no. It's one is enough, and one mailing tool, and so you can clean up your tools. And you said, okay, this is a cut. Tenant-to-tenant migration is my opportunity. That's the same. What I say is tenant-to-tenant migration. Start of GDPR. Start of a new AI Act in this year and Data Governance Act. Yes, that's not bad. That's a funny thing for me and a very good thing. You have arguments to get more money and to change some processes and start with some things you don't do in the last 5 years or last 10 years because it's pandemic and we don't have time and whatever. Yes, now we migrate, and with migration you can do a lot of other things. And I think these are the things what you will learn in the next streams. And then we have also some slides and everything, but this is the general overview, a little bit talking about the funny things of 10-to-10 use cases and also some stories. Or
Yes.
what do you think? Michael, Thomas, and Vinesh. 10-to-10
Well, I
migration,
think
your personal
this is one.
opportunity.
Yeah, this is one topic I think we could just sit and keep talking for hours and hours and hours, and
Yeah.
I think you will never finish. That's just so much that you could talk going on, and I also would feel that you would know enough, but only when you start working on these projects you would realize that, oh gosh, there are just so much of things which I didn't realize, and now I need to break my head with this. So as I said, it's fun, but it is really complex. It could be as complex as it gets. Yeah. So it's two ways.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I said or you already heard, we have different topics, and we will continue this mini series about tenant-to-tenant migration. Just to give you an overview, we will talk about compliance, security. We will talk about the personal data. We will talk about the collab data, like the groups. We will talk about the Power Platform. And every time we talk about these different topics, I will talk about user adoption as well. So this is something pretty much like security. It touches everything.
Yeah.
So
Good.
we will be back in 2 weeks if you want to join the live stream. If you want to consume it as video on demand, please follow these different people on the LinkedIn profile, or the YouTube is a platform, the YouTube channels. I will put it in the description of each video, or the guys will put it in the description, so you can head over to the different channels and I don't know what the English word is for subscribe. So thank you very much to you. I'm done for today, I think. And we will see each other in the next stream.
Happy to be.
Awesome.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye
See
bye
you.
all.
Bye bye.
Bye.